Okay, guys, so I'm sitting here with Ragan. Ragan and I have spent quite a lot of time together over the course of the last 2 months or so, maybe 2.5 months. She helped me with all of my body contouring stuff, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But I wanted to sit down with Ragan today, ask her all the questions you all had for me, and then also just have her kind of explain more in depth what both CoolSculpting and CoolTone are, because I have really enjoyed my experience. I will say I got CoolTone or CoolSculpting 2 days ago, and I am sore.
Yeah.
Very, very sore.
Normal.
Totally normal. Actually better than the last time, I will say, the first time I ever did it. But first, I wanted to just kind of dive in to you a little bit more. Can you tell us a little about yourself, introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey guys, I'm Ragan. I grew up in Connecticut, went to the College of William and Mary here in Virginia, did my bachelor's degree in kinesiology and health science, just knew I was interested in healthcare, but didn't really know what that looked like. After graduating, I was thinking maybe pursuing the mid-level provider track, so physician assistant, nurse practitioner. And so I started medical assisting to accrue patient contact hours, started in dermatology, and then transitioned into plastic surgery. Okay. And that's where I was trained on all the non-invasive body contouring devices.
Okay, cool.
So
how long ago was that?
Let's see. So I graduated William and Mary back in 2015. I was medical assisting in general dermatology for a couple of years, plastic surgery for right under 2 years, and I've now been at Skin DC for 2 years as of this month. So
awesome.
It's been a little bit now.
So I love Skin DC. If y'all are in DC, I've gotten my Botox, all my facials, and then my entire CoolSculpting, CoolTone thing going on at Skin DC. I love that y'all have so many things under one roof. You know what I mean? It's massive.
It's kind of amazing. So I came to be at Skin DC because I actually was a patient of theirs. So while working in plastic surgery, I established care with Dr. Keeney, who's one of the founders of Skin DC, with Dr. Naga. And I found the practice just through internet research. They have a ton of 5-star reviews. And pretty much as soon as I walked in for my first appointment, I knew it sort of stood apart.
Yeah.
Super sleek office, but also comfortable. And I quickly realized how much they do there. So there's a research department where they're doing clinical studies. There's a general dermatology arm, a cosmetic dermatology arm, facial plastic surgery, body contouring.
It's literally huge.
It's huge.
Like whenever I go in there, first of all, they had so many things to offer. And then as well as like when you actually go, when I'm walking through the offices, it's like a maze. Like there's so many different rooms. Like they have a full room for like just taking before and after photos with like lighting and like professional stuff.
It's very serious business.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
I've really appreciated being at Skin DC because usually I kind of, when it comes to aesthetics, I kind of piecemeal like a team together, right? So like in LA, I would choose doctors who could do under eye filler well, and then I had a person I went to for facials, and I had a person I went to for this and that and the other thing. And Skin DC kind of does everything, and they're also really great with obviously like the hires and things like that. I mean, I feel like Dr. Naga and Keeney they know what's going on.
They're awesome. Yeah. That was the other piece for me that kind of made me feel like, okay, this is where I'm staying for my dermatology care, because yes, it's big, but I never felt lost as a patient. So I expected that Dr. Keeney would be awesome. I did my research before going to see him. He's a leader in his field, but just super friendly and personable. Spent a lot of time with me, educating me on, my concerns, treatments. And so I think it's that personal touch too that kind of sets the place apart, to your point. So when the opportunity came about to take over their body contouring department, it was a no-brainer for me, and it's been pretty wonderful.
Yeah, all the while. So you live in Virginia right
now? I'm in Arlington, so pretty close to Skin DC. We're in North Arlington, in Roslyn. And I've been been in the DC area since 2018, so it's been a little bit now.
Yeah, we were just talking about before we turned all the mics on about dating in DC. Mm-hmm. I've gotten a lot of commentary on that. Depends on like who I talk to. My friends who work in politics, they have one say. They're like, I literally hate it here. It's literally the worst.
I could see that.
But I also don't know anyone, now that I think about it, that's like, I love the dating scene in my city. Like every time I see one of my friends from another place, I'm like, how's the dating scene? They're like, I fucking hate it. The LA dating scene sucks. I feel like New York's pretty great.
Really?
Yeah. But people say it sucks, but I think it'd be great.
It's got to depend on who you ask.
Maybe.
Because my friend in Manhattan hates it. Hates it.
What does she hate about it?
I think she's had a hard time finding people that want to settle down and get married. I do feel like that all happens later with the bigger the city is. Mm-hmm. So, and I can imagine maybe a similar sentiment in LA, but...
LA, the men are literally 45 and they're like, I'm not really ready to settle down yet. You're like, you are literally my dad's age almost. What's
if
going
not
on?
Now, when?
Yeah, what is happening right now? I feel like New York's like that. I just have always, I guess when I was dating, I'd go to New York and like date for fun. Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't like, I wasn't going there to find a husband in New York. So maybe that's why I liked it so much. And also it's just convenient. Like I had friends who like would go on a date at like 7 p.m. at like for a drink and they'd go on a separate drink date at like 9.
The energy.
Yeah. They're like bopping around. They're like getting drunk for free.
I think those times are behind me, to be honest.
Yeah, right. I've hit a wall recently. I'm glad I found Joe when I did. Yeah. Because I think I was hitting the wall when I found Joe, and you can find me out and about, maybe at a club or here or there now, but it's rare because I literally can't.
Yeah. No, I can definitely relate. Now being in my late 20s, mm-hmm. I feel a little bit tired. It's so funny though, because when I first moved to DC, I was like, this is amazing. This mm-hmm. is the best. I'm meeting so many interesting people. And I was super motivated to date because it was just a way to see a new city and mm-hmm. meet people. Luckily, going to college somewhat nearby, I had a really good network of people here already, but I don't know, it just felt more fun. I also don't know if it's coming out of COVID, if things just look different now.
I think so.
So because I was in a relationship for most of COVID, so it's just feels like a new frontier. Mm-hmm. Actually, it kind of feels like the Wild West, and I'm like watching the tumbleweeds blow by because I don't know. I haven't had a lot of luck lately.
Yeah. So what do you use? Are you on dating apps and stuff?
I have been off and on, but this probably is, a very familiar sentiment, but I'll just get frustrated with them and stop using them. Yeah. I also find them kind of overwhelming. It's like, I don't know. I don't want to say spoiled for choice because I don't feel spoiled by the dating scene in DC, but it just feels like swiping through a deck of cards sometimes, and it's
very impersonal.
Very, yeah.
Yeah. And I think with men, I mean, like we all know, men don't take good pictures. They don't know what to put on their dating apps. I mean, Joe's profile on his dating app, I almost like skipped over him. And he's like,
but I feel like that's like the good ones don't take amazing pictures of themselves.
I mean,
this has just been my experience.
Like, we have to all be smart and to know, like, okay, is this guy heinous or does he just not take good photos at all?
Exactly.
And so luckily I thought maybe he just didn't take good photos. He actually takes amazing photos. His issue was his first photo was like a super zoomed up like photo of his face. And on the app we were on, when you swipe through, it shows like the full screen of the photo. So
didn't account for the formatting.
The hugest smile, which was cute.
Yeah.
But like it was like you couldn't even see. There was no space on the side of his face in the photo. It was just his face so big. And I was like, who the fuck let this guy do this? Obviously, they're not. They're going off of their friends, things to say.
Yeah, exactly.
But I will say I understand how dating apps are very, very impersonal, mm-hmm. and the fact that I met Joe on one is. Nothing short of a miracle.
It gives me hope.
Yeah.
I'm
a miracle though.
Yeah, you found a good one clearly.
But I was on those dating apps for that specific one. I was on for 5 years before.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was on there.
Are you telling me it's gonna take 5 more years?
I will say, the one I was on, it was called Raya. People don't use it for dating. So when Joe got on it to use it for dating, I was a little bit like, what are you doing? Like, this is not the game that we play here. Like, we just kind of talk for 2 seconds and then we stop speaking. But the ones like Hinge, I feel like are more usable. The League back in the day was a thing. I don't know if you ever used that one.
I don't know what the kids are using these days. I've mainly used Hinge. I will say I deleted it 2 days ago. So
okay. So that was my thing with Raya. I would get on it. I would not be on it. I would be tipsy, get on it again, talk to people when I was bored. But what is your type? Like, what do you...
I think I just want to find someone who is smart and, has opinions about things, is funny. That's really important to me. Yeah. And then just the textbook stuff. Ideally, I would like them to be taller than me. If I'm out, I'm wearing 4-inch heels and I'm 5'8". So, you do the math. Someone who's active, just someone with similar interests.
Does older or younger matter?
I don't think I've ever dated someone younger than me.
Okay, I have.
That would be interesting. A new experience.
Yeah. I mean, men are a little bit more, I don't know, they seem young at your own age, I guess. Immature, I would say. At least the ones I've found. I mean, even with Joe, sometimes I find myself being like, am I really explaining this to a grown-ass man right now? They just don't get it in a lot of ways. So the younger ones, I realized... after I dated them, I was like, oh, they really didn't get it. Like, they really didn't understand what I was saying.
No, sometimes I'm shocked by interactions that I have. Not to rag on guys, but I was in Whole Foods like maybe 2 weekends ago, and I was like picking up stuff from the counter. And this guy was clearly like in his mid-20s, comes up to me and very earnestly asked me to explain the denominations of meat to him because he wanted to understand like how many slices make a sandwich. And I'm just kind of thinking like, this is something weird. We should have established by now. Like, this is weird. This is your first trip to the grocery store. Yeah. Like, clearly. So I don't know how you made it this far, but it's men are concerning at times.
We have to give them a lot of leeway to learn. So I'm sure, DC, my friends who work in politics are like, it's a small town. It's impossible to date. I think they're kind of dating in their circles, which to me doesn't seem very fun.
No, not at all.
Politics seems miserable. Spoken like a person who majored in that in college and decided very, very much against it. But I've gotten like, I don't know, I feel like people in Virginia, there's like a little bit of a different vibe there than people who live fully in DC.
I think so too. DC is very buttoned up, which I actually kind of like. It just becomes hard when the circles get really small. So
we all feel that. I'm sure wherever anyone's listening to this, they have the same idea.
It's hard though, because I love living in DC. I love my work. So I don't want to have to like travel to find someone. Yeah. So I'm kind of hoping it'll just sort itself out.
It probably will.
Just need a little bit more time.
I feel like those things always have to sort themselves out. Otherwise, like, you can't force anything. You know what I mean? So like, you don't really have another choice.
No, I don't.
But I will say I was talking to someone today, a single friend, and she just picked up and moved somewhere like overseas. And I was like, damn, I'm a little bit jealous. Like, I want to do that. And she's like, you should. I'm like, bitch, I have committed now. And there are so many amazing things about the situation I've gotten myself in, but there's some part of me that's like, damn, I don't have the freedom necessarily. And I could, I guess. But then I'm like, I have the worry of, I would miss Joe so much.
Well, yeah.
And I'm like, shit.
You're in
I
it.
got myself into. Fuck. Okay, so let's talk about what we all came here to speak about today, which is body contouring. I got a lot of questions when I started going to Skin DC for first CoolTone and then CoolSculpting. And I kind of wanted to clear those things up. I did want to leave a disclaimer that none of this stuff was something I felt I really, really needed to do. It was something that I was kind of having a little fun with aesthetically, and I wanted to try experimentation-wise, but none of you need to do CoolSculpting. I promise. You're going to be okay. It's not absolutely necessary, but in my experience, I feel a little more confident after my first session with CoolSculpting. The CoolTone was really great as well, but I think it's the CoolSculpting, when I first started seeing the results that I was like, shit, that's actually so good. It's pretty cool. That's pretty great. And I just did my second round 2 days ago with Ragan. I've done everything with Ragan. And I've still got like Sharpie marker on me a little bit.
Things are happening under the surface.
Things are happening. They're a little sore, but in 3 or so weeks, I feel like it's going to be the best results ever. And I'll share that with you guys on my Instagram when the time comes. But I thought I'd have Ragan on to discuss everything because I got a lot of questions and I don't know how to answer them. And I'd rather pass the mic on to someone who actually knows than me try to meander my way through some kind of shitty answer.
We'll navigate it together.
Yeah, we'll do it. So first, let's talk about, we're going to switch this or kind of organize this into two sections. So we'll talk about CoolSculpting first and then CoolTone after, because they're two different treatments. And I want to explain them both pretty well. So let's talk about CoolSculpting first. So can you explain what CoolSculpting is just initially?
Yes. So CoolSculpting uses cold temperature to stimulate a biological response in your body where the cold is telling your fat cells to enter apoptosis or irreversible cell death. Okay. And those dead fat cells get eaten up by macrophages, your body's cleanup cells, and they're ultimately excreted through the lymphatic system. And that process happens during the first 4 weeks that we do a treatment. So typically, patients will start noticing change as early as 4 weeks out, but it tends to take 8 to 12 weeks to see the full effect of a single treatment.
Okay.
And with each round of treatment that we do at an area, we're destroying up to 20 to 25% of the fat cells.
Okay.
That is a permanent reduction, which is kind of cool. So when we come out of adolescence and enter adulthood, we have a fixed number of fat cells, meaning we don't continue making new ones throughout our lifetime, but fat cells are like storage units that expand with weight gain and contract with weight loss. So when we destroy a number of them in an adult, whether it's through something invasive like liposuction or non-invasive like CoolSculpting, we can achieve a permanent reduction in that they will never regenerate. Okay. And it's with that permanence that with each additional round of CoolSculpting that we do at an area, we can achieve an even greater reduction. So with 2 rounds of treatment, we're looking at up to a 40 to 50% reduction. Now, for reference, in a liposuction procedure, they're typically going to be removing anywhere from 50 to 70% of the fat cells. Okay. So it's with multiple rounds of CoolSculpting that we can start to approach a surgical-like outcome, which is exciting because it's totally non-invasive.
Yeah, absolutely.
As you saw. So,
yes. And there's downtime for me, like I would say, like I'm sore and it's not a super incredibly comfortable procedure all the time. Part of it was fine, but it's interesting to get that kind of result with not that much downtime after, especially, I think is the thing. And not having to like actually go under anesthesia or anything like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the reason patients choose to pursue CoolSculpting is to avoid having surgery. You're essentially paying for the luxury of not having surgery. And that's the appeal. And then I think the value is in its permanence.
Yeah.
The only time, I guess speaking to the longevity of the treatment a little bit more, the only time that we grow new fat cells as adults is if we enter the obesity category, but short of that, it is a fixed number, and the results will last a lifetime.
Okay, cool. So who is a great candidate for CoolSculpting in your opinion?
The ideal candidate is someone who's within a healthy weight range, someone who does not have excessive skin laxity. So loose skin tends to masquerade as fat, and while I can definitely perform a CoolSculpting treatment on that patient, they're probably going to be underwhelmed by their before and after picture. Okay. And then a patient who is doing the right stuff lifestyle-wise, so just kind of being mindful of diet and exercise, but who really wants to spot treat or target areas that are not going away with their lifestyle efforts. Yeah. So that's the contouring piece.
So I will say, I'll add in here, people ask me why I decided to do it. Other than just the opportunity to try it, I personally have like one area around my midsection that no matter how much I've dieted or exercised, though being myself, I haven't very intensely done either, but I just know I'm not going to do it. And there was like a mini little pouch. Joe calls it the worm. It's always there.
I've not heard that one.
It never goes away, and I can suck it in with like Skims or something, but just feeling my best wise, I would, if someone gave me the opportunity to have it gone, I was like, hell yeah, I'll remove that. And with one treatment, I saw some major results. I was about 4 weeks in after the swelling and like kind of the inflammation a little bit went down. I will say I never had like redness. When I say swelling, I mean like I was just like a little bit bloated almost looking, but nothing crazy, no redness or bruising or anything like that, in my case at least. But I started noticing the week before I came in for the second treatment, I was like, oh shit. Like I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh my God.
It's working.
It's working. It's actually working. So I'm excited to see what the second treatment has done in the next few weeks. So can you speak to what would make someone not a candidate for CoolSculpting? If they came in and said, hey, I want to do CoolSculpting. What would make you say, maybe this isn't the route for you?
So one of the reasons I enjoy working with CoolSculpting is that so many people are candidates for the treatment. Most of us can find an area to treat somewhere on our bodies.
Yeah.
But I think where I'll find myself saying no is, one, if a patient kind of has some work to do to get back into that healthy weight range. Again, I can perform a CoolSculpting treatment on that patient, but they're going to be underwhelmed by their results, and their time and resources will be better served for waiting until they're within that healthy BMI range. Okay. Patients who have expectations that maybe are beyond what I can provide with a non-invasive treatment. So if I compare one CoolSculpting treatment to one liposuction procedure, they're apples and oranges. Yeah. CoolSculpting is going to be a process. We're going to need to meet probably 2 or 3 times until a patient is satisfied with their outcome, and that's going to happen over the course of a few months. And in some cases, it's not still necessarily going to meet a lipo-like result. It very much depends on the patient. I think another scenario where I would say no to a patient is if they express to me that they want really aggressive reduction fast. Okay. For that patient, their time and resources are going to be better spent pursuing a liposuction procedure because it's a one and done. Okay. So where CoolSculpting, again, is really the sweet spot is for patients who are averse to surgery, or they can't afford the downtime or the stigmata. There's social downtime with CoolSculpting. You talked about the swelling that you experience. There is also a chance of mild bruising with the treatment. So it's not necessarily a treatment I would do a week before a patient's beach vacation. But generally, it's very well tolerated. So I think it's just really incumbent on me as the provider to, number one, assess the patient's candidacy for the treatment and make sure I can give them quality results. But number two, assessing their goals and expectations from the treatment and just making sure we're having a meeting of the minds in that consultation.
The number one question was, how much does a CoolSculpting treatment cost? At Skin DC, at least. I guess you can only speak to that. Yeah, so we use pricing that I've found through market research is pretty competitive in the DC area, where CoolSculpting is sold by the applicator. And it's when you start to purchase more applicators in a package, whether you're treating multiple areas or performing multiple rounds of treatment or both, you start to achieve savings per applicator. And so you kind of reach a lowest price per applicator with larger packages. Okay. Now, I would say that at Skin DC, on average, I'm treating areas at least twice for patients. And so that's putting me at an average package of maybe $3,000 to $4,000. But a reason that I'm so reticent to give pricing, particularly over the phone, because I get this question all the time is there's such a range. So you probably won't find a CoolSculpting treatment, an initial treatment, for much less than $1,000 to $2,000. But it can really go up from there, and it's all dependent on how many areas are being treated. So realistically, if we're talking about treating multiple areas on someone's body multiple times, the cost can meet or even surpass the cost of surgery. But again, it's kind of paying for the luxury of not having surgery. Yeah. I actually know a lot of girls who have gotten liposuction. I didn't realize in the influencer space, so many people get so many procedures. And I recently found out a lot of people got liposuction, but their recovery didn't seem, they all spoke to their recovery being relatively quick, but it wasn't something I would want to have to recover from, seeing the photos. So it makes CoolSculpting look really, really easy.
Yeah, I think that's the appeal.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the negative side effects of CoolSculpting. Can you let us in on any dangers that come with the procedure?
Common side effects of the treatment are really things that we expect to see afterwards. So typically that's tenderness, numbness, some passing itching and tingling sensations, mild swelling and bruising. All this stuff tends to resolve within days to weeks post-treatment. Now, there are a couple very rare side effects of the treatment that I like to review with patients always in consultation. First one being hyperpigmentation or darkening of the skin. So I treat all skin types safely with CoolSculpting, but very rarely, in my experience, in about 1 in 5,000 treatments, we can see a darkening response to the kind of thermal injury we're creating with the cold. That's something that would resolve on its own over time. If it happened at Skin DC, Doctors Naga or Kini would likely prescribe a lightening cream that would resolve that issue much faster over the course of several weeks.
Okay, cool.
The super rare one that I've been fielding a lot of questions about over the last year, since it was in the news last fall, is one called Paradoxical Adipose Hyperplasia. What the heck is that? This is a very rare phenomenon. In my experience, the incidence is about 1 in 10,000 treatments, where instead of the treatment causing the area to get smaller, it causes it to get bigger. Okay. So the opposite of what we wanted when we did CoolSculpting. There is nothing pathological about it. It is completely benign. It is only treatable with liposuction. Okay. So the solution would be this. CoolSculpting is an Allergan product. Allergan is the big pharmaceutical company that owns so many of the recognizable aesthetic brands like Botox, Juvederm, Latisse, SkinMedica, Kybella. If a patient developed this side effect, the practice would submit their clinical notes as a case to Allergan. Allergan would review the case and ultimately send the patient a check to pay for the liposuction. Okay. So there is a commitment on their part to fixing it, which in my opinion speaks to the rarity of the side effect. Yeah. And that really kind of completes the side effect profile with CoolSculpting.
Okay, cool. That's the one that I got a lot of questions about, the Linda Evangelista's disfigurement, I guess. That's something that you explained to me, not with her name attached, but you did explain the side effect. And when you explained it to me, explained the whole Allergan process, I felt a little bit better about it. And obviously, luckily, everything's great with my whole procedure.
Looking good.
And to me, it was totally worth it in the end. But again, I didn't want to speak to the side effects just so people knew any of the dangers that can come of it.
I appreciate, addressing it in consultation with patients proactively, because it is kind of a scary thing to read about online, particularly with that news item. There were a lot of big, scary words attached to that story. My take on that situation is this. I would venture to say, and I don't think this is an exaggeration, that most of Hollywood has probably been CoolSculpted twice over at this point. So
I 100% believe that.
I'm putting it out there. Yeah. Side effects are a numbers game. So from a provider perspective, I almost viewed it as an inevitability that eventually a famous person would experience a side effect with CoolSculpting. Yeah. I think it's important to keep in mind they've done over 11 million treatments worldwide. CoolSculpting has been FDA approved over a decade, so a lot of people have been CoolSculpted. Yeah. And, it's one where we really do have amazing support from the company if this occurs in our practice.
Yeah, which again, like you were saying, kind of speaks to the rarity of that.
Exactly. Yeah. So with that, I really don't have any reticence recommending the treatment to patients. I've done CoolSculpting personally a couple of times over now. Yeah. So I can speak to the experience, and I use it virtually without issue at Skin DC. And I'm doing a whole lot of it, by the way. So as of this year, as an individual, I'm performing consistently some of the most CoolSculpting in the country, and pretty consistently the most in Virginia. Performing on average at Skin DC between 2,000 and 3,000 treatments a year. So if something's going to happen with CoolSculpting, I've been doing the CoolSculpting for about 4 years now. I'm going to have encountered it. And
you're literally the pro.
I do a lot of CoolSculpting.
She's the CoolSculpting girl. You know all the things. Okay, so I wanted to ask one question too, because I got this question twice actually, because I asked people on my story to submit questions. When it comes to CoolSculpting, are there any potential implications for fertility doing something like that so close to your ovaries?
Totally reasonable question. We're treating over the abdomen most often. It's the most popular part of the body that I treat at Skin DC, and the majority of my patients are women. There is no risk of harm to your reproductive organs. Okay. In a CoolSculpting treatment, the CoolSculpting applicator is delivering cold temperature that's penetrating to the depth of the subcutaneous fatty layer, which exists right under the skin but above the musculature. Okay. And so it is not impacting underlying structures. And we can say that with confidence. I mentioned CoolSculpting has been around for over a decade. It's very well studied technology. So it has over 100 peer-reviewed papers written on it. Actually, both Doctors Naga and Keeney are published in CoolSculpting. Okay. And we really have a good understanding of the side effect profile. It's considered very safe.
Okay, yeah. I felt like that when I was getting it. I could tell. I mean, like, I feel like if things are, that's like invasive level, something would be doing that. Someone else asked, is it like lipo where fat can pop up in other areas later? So I don't really know how that works because I'm not super familiar with the liposuction procedure. But does that make sense to you, that question?
It does. Okay. It's an interesting question that I get asked pretty regularly. Okay. It is not like whack-a-mole where if we take it from one place, it's going to pop up somewhere else. The idea with really any body contouring treatment in the fat reduction category is that we're targeting an area where a patient is genetically predisposed to have a higher number of fat cells or little storage units. Okay. And by destroying a number of fat cells in an area where one has excess relative to other parts of the body, we can put that area back in harmony with the rest of the body. So it's just no longer going to be one of the first places to get noticeably bigger with weight gain or one of the last places to ever go away with weight loss. And so kind of coming back to the longevity of the treatment, if a patient does gain weight after a CoolSculpting procedure, it's going to be evenly distributed amongst all those remaining fat cells in the body. And so I think the phenomenon that can happen is that once we've eliminated an area with CoolSculpting or with liposuction, the eye is no longer drawn there. And so maybe with weight gain, we start to notice other areas that we didn't before. But I promise it's not popping up in new odd places.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about that the other day because I was like, I read that question and I was like, oh no, like, is my like butt getting it? You know what I mean? But then I was like, okay, maybe because my fupa's diminishing. I'm noticing other places because for my whole life I've just stared at the fupa. But now it came into my mind that might be the answer. Okay, so the last question I have for CoolSculpting, then we're going to talk about CoolTone because I did both. I loved both. So how long until you can do CoolSculpting postpartum?
So the only contexts where we don't treat with CoolSculpting are if a woman is pregnant or breastfeeding. Okay. And we just don't do clinical studies with women in those conditions because it's not worth the risk to mom and baby. And so as soon as a woman is finished breastfeeding, she can pursue CoolSculpting or CoolTone.
So we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk about CoolTone because despite them having similar names, they're very different treatments or procedures. So can you explain what CoolTone is and why would someone want to get CoolTone done?
So to your point, CoolTone is completely different from CoolSculpting. We're using magnetic energy, so magnetic muscle stimulation, where an applicator is firing magnetic energy, penetrating down to the fast twitch muscle fibers, causing them to contract repeatedly during a treatment. And this produces a strengthening, toning, and firming of muscle groups. So these treatments play really well together because we can oftentimes first work with CoolSculpting to reduce that subcutaneous fat pad, and then we can come behind with CoolTone and kind of build up the muscle from underneath to produce a more powerful aesthetic outcome. Okay. The interesting thing about CoolTone is its dual benefit. So you have the aesthetic outcome, you'll look more firm and toned. If we're speaking to the abdomen treatment for women, we're going to take you closer to those 11 lines. For guys, closer to the 6-pack. But you're also physically stronger. So again, speaking to the core, your workouts will be more efficient. You'll have greater core strength. You'll be able to hold a plank for longer. There are postural implications. I've had patients report to me that they have improvements with back pain. So it's a really interesting treatment, and I find that patients pursue it for different reasons. So there are a lot of people can benefit from CoolTone depending on what their goals are with the treatment.
Okay, so with CoolTone also you can kind of put it anywhere.
Well, we have FDA approval to treat the abs, glutes, and thighs. Okay, all popular areas that I treat, but the abdomen, again, is probably the most popular at Skin DC.
Yeah, that's the one that I did. I know some of my friends have used the M-Sculpt treatment, which is similar, I've heard, for like butt and thighs. I did not try obviously, for my butt and thighs. I just did my abs, and I did the CoolTone first before the CoolSculpting, and it took me a little while because my abs actually did get sore a little bit, like through the process. I went to a solid core class in between my CoolTone days, which we'll talk about in a second, and I was so sore. But then after all of the treatments, I ended up like, I can really plank amazingly now. Like, I'm shocked by how strong my core got just in those treatments. I did
That's awesome.
9 total treatments. And we tried to do back-to-back days as much as possible. We kind of just tried to fit all 9 treatments as close together as possible. Can you explain kind of the scheduling of that and why you do them so close together?
You, like many of the patients that I work with at Skin DC, keep super busy schedules. And so CoolTone scheduling can be challenging at times. Luckily, it's super quick and easy. So it's a 30-minute treatment. There's no mess, no fuss. You can wear gym clothes to a treatment and walk right out afterwards. But we use a pretty aggressive initial treatment plan at Skin DC. So I like to see patients 9 times over the course of about 3 weeks. And we just need a minimum of 24 hours in between treatments. Typically, patients tolerate that plan pretty well. You feel pretty good and normal walking out of a treatment, and you may have some residual soreness the next day or the following, but typically it's as if you did a workout in the gym. So this is a treatment that gets compared to doing like 30,000 sit-ups in 30 minutes, but you're not going to be feeling that way the next day.
Yeah.
And that's in part because there's a tapping mechanism built into the treatment that's tapping out lactic acid as we go. So it's a very elegant design, but typically it's 3 weeks, very fast progression of the results. So by the end of that series, we tend to see upwards of a 30% improvement. Now, another way in which CoolTone differs from the CoolSculpting is that it is not permanent. So I do recommend a maintenance regimen with CoolTone. I like to see people back once a month for a single treatment. So I kind of like folks to think of it like a really, really accelerated gym membership in a way.
Okay, so as far as CoolTone, I know people are going to ask about the price of that one as well. Do y'all do price per session? You do packages, I'm sure.
All of the above. So our CoolTone treatments range from $200 to $300 a session. It, again, kind of comes back to how many treatments you're purchasing in a package. We always do an initial series of 9, and then we like patients to be able to approach the maintenance however they want. So we offer packages, individual maintenance treatments, and actually very recently we launched a CoolTone membership in an effort to give patients access to the treatments at a lower price point.
Okay, cool. And then who would you say is a good candidate for that one? Is it similar to CoolSculpting?
Similar, but a little different. So the ideal CoolTone candidate is within a healthy weight range, does not have excessive skin laxity, but this is also a patient who's going to have some good visible baseline muscle definition. Okay. So they may be at a different fitness level than the average CoolSculpting patient. And CoolTone is very much a treatment that pairs well with healthy diet and exercise. I see the results of CoolTone go further for patients that are pairing it with regular exercise.
Yeah. So how you said it's, people say it's like doing 30,000 sit-ups in 30 minutes. How does it differ from working out? Is it affecting a deeper muscle? What would be beneficial about doing this rather than just going to Pilates, a couple times a week?
So CoolTone is activating fast twitch muscle fibers, which typically are getting recruited in an Olympic level workout. Okay. So we're kind of taking things to a level that is going to be very difficult to achieve in the gym. So again, I find that patients pursue CoolTone for different reasons. From a strengthening perspective, it's really beneficial to patients that are putting in the time in the gym and want a boost to take things to the next level. I also find it can be beneficial to postpartum women, which is interesting. So
it's really interesting.
Your abdominal wall, I think of like your inner corset, and it weakens and separates with time, but definitely with childbearing. The only thing that truly fixes that is something that's often done in a tummy tuck procedure where they'll go in and they'll sew the muscle back together. But we can actually use a treatment like CoolTone, and in strengthening the abdominal wall, we can help tighten it back up, tighten that corset.
Yeah, I never thought about that.
So it's very popular with postpartum women. my active patients that are putting in the work at the gym, and kind of anyone who's benefiting from CoolSculpting treatments at the abdomen is likely going to benefit from CoolTone as sort of a phase 2.
Yeah, I really liked CoolTone. And I feel like
it's kind of addictive.
We talked about like the athletes using that kind of, I guess, technology as well.
Absolutely.
I want to get Joe in there to do one.
Yeah.
At some point. If we're back here next season.
I'm here. Just call me when you need me. Yes. No, I've treated athletes with CoolTone as well. It's kind of a shortcut that allows you access to a level that, again, is just really hard to achieve in the gym.
Yeah. I mean, it's like everything aesthetic. It's like, it's always a shortcut.
It's a cheat code. Yeah. For sure.
I mean, the whole Kardashian thing where everyone's like, you're not ugly, you're just broke.
Exactly.
God damn it. I hate that for us.
I know. I do too. I'm sure they all have machines in their house.
Oh my gosh. They have CoolSculpting in their house.
I'm sure.
For sure.
Yeah, I'd bet.
If not a whole surgical team.
They've got a suite. They have an OR.
Yeah, they really do.
Must be nice.
Okay, so what are some negative side effects of CoolTone, if any?
CoolTone is very well tolerated. There are very few contraindications for CoolTone. The big one, the hard stop, is metal implants or devices, particularly in and around the treatment area, which for women can even include a copper IUD because we're using magnetic energy. We don't want to be messing around with metal. Patients who are prone to seizures should avoid CoolTone. The sensation of the treatment is also completely different from CoolSculpting, and you can speak to this, but it feels like you're tensing up and releasing for 30 minutes, and so that just can be too much for certain categories of patients. Outside of that, there are very few restrictions when it comes to CoolTone. In terms of considerations for women, we don't like to perform CoolTone when a woman is on her period. We're stimulating muscle contraction, and so it's just going to potentially produce more cramping and bleeding that we would rather avoid.
I will say I did one on my period because there was a while there that I had 2 periods a month, so it was going to happen eventually. I didn't feel much different after that. I will say, to me, the process felt like, when I was sitting there actually getting it done, felt almost like a period cramp. But not like a crazy, like it wasn't like one time I went to the ER because I had period cramps. It wasn't like that. It was like, that was not good. I actually found out it was like a cyst that ruptured.
That is the most painful thing in the world.
And my doctor was like, oh, it's the number one reason women in their 20s go to the ER. And I'm like, first of all, how did I not know this? Second of all, she's like, it's fine. You were just like internally bleeding for a little while, which is why it hurts so bad. And I'm sitting there looking at her like, I was just, what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah, it was absolutely miserable. CoolTone did not feel like that.
Okay, good. For the record.
But it really is like a tensing of the muscles. And you kind of go up in intensity slowly with your provider. We did that pretty well. It took me a couple different sessions to get to the full 100%. And I will say, for both of these things, Skin DC at least had a place for me to like sit and kind of relax while both of them are happening, though they can be a little bit uncomfortable. I was watching Netflix. I continued watching Bloodline. I actually watched an episode of Bloodline. Joe and I watched that show together because I was like, I need something to distract me from the cool sculpting process. Just
comfort
that initial,
show.
Like that initial like freezing part until I get acclimated. And I had to watch an episode of Bloodline without him because I was like, it's the one thing that's going to like really pull me in. He was so mad, but he also understood. He was like, yeah, whenever I get way too bored, sometimes I watch ahead. But they have Netflix in there, which I also really appreciated. I realized I didn't speak to like what it actually looks like to get this done. You're like sitting in a little chair, both of them. We sat in the same chair. And this CoolSculpting, they put these little like, I would just describe them as like little suckers on you, and it just like sucks up your skin and your fat and then like freezes it. And then the CoolTone, there's like these big magnets on you that make you kind of tense up. But both times I was kind of laying-ish, like a little bit reclined, and just relaxing on my phone or watching Netflix.
Yeah, we try to keep things pretty cozy. I mean, I feel super passionately about this stuff and the patient experience. So I think we've curated an experience that's cozy and comfortable and also convenient for patients. Speaking to that, one of the big upgrades that we made at Skin DC at the beginning of 2021 was adopting the new CoolSculpting technology, which is what we use during your treatments together. It's called CoolSculpting Elite. They've made some pretty major upgrades, one of those being efficiency. So these new machines have 2 applicators per system. Because I have multiple systems at my disposal at SkinDC, I can quad sculpt patients or apply as many as 4 applicators at once to make the treatment go much faster, which tends to be a game changer for busy patients like yourself. They've also refined the shapes of all the CoolSculpting applicators to better hug the curves of the body. So we're getting a more perfect draw of the tissue and in effect treating a greater surface area, which at SkinDC is translating to better and faster results. I will say that we were one of the first 200 providers in the country to get these new machines. So I've already performed close to 5,000 treatments on them.
That's so crazy.
While it is kind of crazy. While there have not yet been any head-to-head studies comparing Elite with the predecessor systems, 5,000 treatments is a pretty good sample size. I'm seeing amazing results. So, cutting down treatment times has been part of the patient experience. And, with you being in kind of a recliner chair, oftentimes patients will bring a laptop and work.
I saw that on y'all's Instagram.
Yes.
Recently,
I've had patients take conference calls while being cool sculpted. It's very DC. It's ultimate multitasking.
That's awesome.
But we try to make it as comfortable and pleasant as possible.
Okay, so the same question as the cool sculpting. Any implications for like fertility problems, anything like that with the CoolTone?
Definitely not. Again, that energy is penetrating to the musculature, but it is not impacting underlying structures like your organs. So no concerns there.
And then we talked about using it postpartum, but is there any kind of wait time between giving birth, basically, and doing this that you would recommend?
So in terms of timing on CoolTone in the postpartum context, I would just want to wait until a woman was well healed from her delivery before we pursued
just
treatment.
Make it comfortable.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us
Thank
today.
you.
You were like a little scientist. Every time I talk to you about it, I mean, I guess you technically are a scientist-ish. You're
in a
talking
sense.
sample sizes. You're like, I have a good sample size. Everything that you say has always been very eloquent. So I knew having you on the podcast would be great because it's like,
oh, thank you.
You talk like I'm reading something perfectly. You know what I mean?
Professor Freeze.
Yeah. You have it all in your brain. It's crazy because I'm a person, I have a podcast for a living at this point, and you can hear the way I just phrased that. I'm like, my brain, there's like nothing in there sometimes. So whenever I hear people talk, I'm like, oh my God, say that again.
I don't know about that.
So smoothly.
We've had some great conversations in our CoolTone sessions.
A lot of time together.
Yes, we have.
A lot of time. And I'll be sad to leave DC, but again, I'm really hoping we're back next year.
We'll miss you a lot.
We'll see.
Definitely
Unless
come back
New
and
York
see me.
Wants to take us, then I'll be happy to go there.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. But thank you so much. If y'all are in DC, please go to SkinDC I went for everything. I get my monthly hydrofacials there. I had the best consult with Dr. Naga, who gave me I left with this folder of the full plan of what I need to do for the next 5 years in terms of the products I need to be using, procedures, things like that, which I really appreciated. There were some things I wanted to do that they were like, we can't do that this part of year. We could do it, but we don't think you should. I just like how specific they are in treatment plan, and like you said, kind of personalized and holistic in a lot of ways. So I've had the best experience, probably the best experience I've ever had with any kind of aesthetic treatments at all at SkinDC. So I can't help but sing the praises of SkinDC, and I'm really happy that I got connected with y'all when I first got here.
Well, that makes us super happy. So I'm so glad you've had that experience.
Thanks. Y'all can find Ragan also. Let me pimp out your socials.
Oh, please.
So you tell them your Instagram, and then you can mention the SkinDC one too.
So the body contouring page is at Body by SkinDC, and then we do the bulk of our posts though on the main SkinDC page, which is just at SkinDC.
Yeah, and Reagan's been doing her reels lately.
I've been trying.
Her reel game is really strong. So y'all go look at hers on Instagram.
I'm just out here embarrassing myself.
Right?
So
we all have to do it.
If you're looking for some entertainment.
We all have to do it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.